On Russia and Eastern Europe. She's also book review editor for Ukraine, which promotes scholarly and intellectual discussions of Ukrainian studies and history. Kimberly, you've been in touch with some of the African students who'd had similar experiences. What do they tell you?
We're seeing, unfortunately, a lot of the same reports. So you're hearing about African students being pushed to the back of the line, and it's understandable. There is a line for Ukrainian citizens who can easily pass into the Polish border, for example, and a line for students who are not from Ukraine who will have longer processing times. So I think that's important to recognize. But we also have to recognize racism definitely plays a part. Students are being pushed to the back of that line, which isn't for Ukrainian citizens. They're not even being allowed to be on trains or buses or cars that are trying to get to the Polish border. And so we have to recognize that, too. There's some hair-raising stories I've heard of people not being able to get on buses. In fact, the student I spoke to yesterday, he was pulled off of a bus, and the only reason he was able to get on was because a Ukrainian woman saw him and said that he was her husband. And that was why he was able to get on, and he was the only African student allowed onto the bus towards the Polish border. So this is a significant crisis that we're seeing for these African students.
So when they can't get on buses, they can't get on trains, they're forcing people to walk?
Yes, people are walking 20 and 30 miles to get towards the Polish border. And so this is African students, Indian students, Middle Eastern students. We're seeing this across the board for these visible minorities.
And Ukraine's foreign minister tweeted about the issue earlier this week, saying the government is sparing no effort to solve the problem and that the government has set up a hotline for African and Asian students trying to leave the country. Have you been able to get a sense from the people you're talking with that the situation maybe has changed in the last couple of days?
Yes, I think the situation has improved for many, but it's also, this isn't just a problem the Ukrainian government can handle, particularly when you're hundreds or thousands of miles from Kiev, the capital. So I think it's also going to require more help from those Ukrainians who do see this going on to, help put their foot down and help these students, like that Ukrainian woman did for the student I spoke to yesterday.
Tia, Europe is expected to see this large number of refugees, maybe the largest number of refugees that have been seen in years. We saw some of that, of course, the wave of refugees from the Middle East, North Africa, and Afghanistan in 2015, and they were treated differently back then. Is Europe prepared for all these refugees?
I don't think they are prepared for all these refugees. In fact, I do believe that's why NATO sounded the alarm so quickly. They're terrified of another refugee crisis on their continent. They know what happened last time. What we saw in Europe was the rise in the extreme right. We saw candidates and politicians getting high-level offices in various countries, including some of these countries where these refugees are headed. And let's look at the EU directive yesterday that was passed. Kimberly's done some amazing work in getting these voices out of Black and brown people trying to leave Ukraine and seeing all the problems that they've faced. That EU directive does not include third country nationals. In fact, they wanted to include it, but some of the countries, including Poland, asked the EU to not give those rights to the third country nationals because of, let's face it, racism. It's a word that we must use when we talk about it. We need to get those voices out. And we need to remember, this is a humanitarian situation, humanity. This isn't white, black, brown. We need to remember everyone leaving is leaving to try to protect their lives. And can I mention one other thing that really concerns me when it comes to the refugee crisis that not many people are talking about at the moment, and something that we saw in 2015, and that's human trafficking. With the mass exodus that we're seeing right now, yes, we're seeing the warm hearts opening their homes, and it's fantastic to see, but there are people out there. We don't know the shady people that are waiting across that border. I was talking to a friend who has a Ukrainian American friend here whose 21-year-old sister left for Poland. Her parents stayed behind to fight in Ukraine, and now she's alone in Warsaw. And she's terrified what that means for her young, beautiful sister. It doesn't matter if you're, it doesn't matter what country you come from. When it comes to situations like this, there are nefarious figures waiting to take their chance.
I'm so happy that you're mentioning this, Tia. It's so critical. We think that the majority of the people that are leaving now, that are leaving Ukraine, are mothers with children, women with children, and many of them could be very well well could be victimized. How can we, Tia, help make a difference?
It's going to be hard. This is a large mass exodus. We need to work together. We need to make sure that the organizations that are on the border, whether it be UNHCR, or IRC, countries involved. I mean, these countries that are turning away and treating third country nationals not as well as Ukrainians, you got to wonder what else they're not doing to help protect these refugees. We need to be together on this. We need America to get involved. We need to get other countries that are far away, and not just the neighboring countries, to help those neighboring countries. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult, and there will be, unfortunately, some issues that we can't take care of, but we need to try our best.
Tia and Kimberly St. Julian Vernon, thank you so much for being with us this morning. That wraps up the hour for me. I'm Jose Diaz-Balart. Thank you for